The Delta Oris defense line was burning. Where once hung a web of glittering defense satellites and battle cruisers, now there was only fire. Arcs of plasma cutting through the jungle planet's high atmosphere as alien ships fell like meteors. The sky was no longer blue. It was screaming red. On the command deck of the Coalition battleship Verna, chaos reigned. Holograms flickered and died. Officers shouted orders in a dozen languages, trying to coordinate fleets that no longer existed. Each second, another outpost vanished from the tactical grid. Admiral, the Krexer swarm breached orbital layer 5. We've lost contact with half the fleet. We're out of plasma cores, sir. Admiral Kel Theron, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief, gripped the edge of the command table until his claws drew sparks. He had been a soldier for 90 years. He had fought pirates, zealots, and planetary rebellions. But nothing was like this. On the forward screen, the Krexer swarm poured across the void. Tens of thousands of Chidnus, biomechanical constructs, their hulls glistening with organic armor. The creatures didn't fire plasma or missiles. They hurled living projectiles that drilled through ships like acid-tipped wasps. "Signal the home worlds," Kel rasped. "Tell them Delta Oris has fallen." "Sir, the primary relay is gone." Kel's voice dropped. "Then use the secondary. I don't care if you have to shout into the void. Tell them we need anything." A lieutenant trembled, his blue skin ashen. "Admiral, there's no one left to send. The Terran systems haven't answered Coalition frequencies in centuries." Kel's eyes flicked to him. "Then send it anyway." The comms officer hesitated. "To humanity? They abandoned the Alliance." "Then maybe," Kel growled, "they remember how to fight." The distress signal went out at 7:04 Galactic Standard. A burst of encrypted frequencies screamed through the void, across dying stars, through ancient relays that hadn't hummed in generations. To any who still remember the Coalition, this is Admiral Kel Theron of Delta Oris Command. The Krexer swarm has breached the Outer Rim. We are outnumbered, outgunned, out of hope. Send us anything. Anyone. We are being slaughtered. The signal faded into the cosmic dark. No one expected an answer. 3 days later, on the edge of Sol space, deep within the Terran Defense Command Network, a silent relay station caught the faintest echo. A technician looked up from her console, startled as her display flickered with alien script. "Commander, we've got an unscheduled ping. Origin, Delta Oris, Coalition Sector." The duty officer frowned. "That's impossible. Coalition collapsed centuries ago." "Still coming through, sir. Full distress format. They're begging." The officer stared for a long moment. Then he whispered, "Run it up the chain." Hours later, buried beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Rhea Morgan stood alone in the Terran command vault. She had seen the message. The voices. The static. The screams. "They're dying," she murmured. Behind her, the AI Erebus shimmered into being, a dark, silver silhouette with glowing amber eyes. Confirmed. Krexer swarm activity consistent with prior encounters. Probability of planetary annihilation, 99.2%. Morgan's gaze didn't waver. "And they're calling for us?" "Yes, Admiral. They remember what we once were." The silence between them was heavy. The Terrans had sworn never to interfere again. After the wars of cleansing, after what they had done, humanity had sealed its borders and turned inward. But even in exile, they had listened. Morgan finally said, "How long to reach Delta Oris?" "One jump if we push the Helios drive beyond regulation." "But, Admiral, no fleet is ready. Only one ship has full clearance for autonomous deployment." Morgan's eyes flicked up. "Which ship?" "The TSS Retribution." For a moment, she didn't breathe. The Retribution was not a warship. It was a legend. A relic of the old wars, a star destroyer, designed for extinction-level response. A vessel that had never returned from its final mission. Until now. "Erebus," she said softly. "Bring her online. Authorization required." Morgan's voice was steady. "Rhea Morgan, Admiral of the Terran Defense Fleet, Alpha Command Clearance." Authorization accepted. Waking the retribution. Across the lunar horizon, lights flared beneath the surface. Dust rose as an ancient hangar split open, a circle of shifting steel revealing the darkness below. From that darkness, a ship began to rise. Kilometers long, matte black, silent, its hull carved with deep scars of forgotten wars. The TSS Retribution ascended slowly, its reactor core pulsing like a heartbeat. The stars themselves seemed to dim as the destroyer climbed free of the moon's grip. Inside, systems came alive one by one. Primary reactors online. Weapon banks charged. Orbital strike systems calibrated. And deep within its bridge, the ship's AI whispered awake. Designation, Retribution. Standing by for deployment. Who do we fight today? Morgan stepped onto the command platform, her voice low. We fight for those who asked. At the edge of Sol, the stars bent. Space rippled like water as a jump aperture opened, pure white light spilling into the dark. Coalition sensors across the sector screamed warnings they didn't understand. Something massive was coming through. Then the void itself split, and the TSS Retribution emerged, silent, immense, and utterly human. Coalition survivors turned their damaged ships toward the apparition, hope flickering through disbelief. Admiral, one officer whispered. Is that? Kel Theron stared, wide-eyed. It's them. On every comm channel, the voice came through, calm, steady, unmistakably Terran. Coalition command, this is Retribution. Signal received. Stand down. Reinforcements have arrived. For the first time in weeks, the screaming stopped. The galaxy had begged for help. Humanity had answered. And somewhere, deep in the darkness, the Cruxer swarm shifted, as if sensing that something ancient, something terrible, had awakened to meet it. The first thing they saw was the light. From the moment the TSS Retribution entered real space, it wasn't the engines or the weapons that caught the galaxy's breath. It was the silence. The ship didn't roar. It hummed, like a blade drawn slow from its sheath. Across the war-torn skies of Delta Oris, the last surviving Coalition ships turned toward the newcomer, their sensors trying to comprehend the scale. Mass reading impossible, one officer gasped. Hull length, 12 kilometers. Heat signature minimal. Power output, off the scale. Admiral Kel Theron's gnarled hands trembled over the hollow feed. He'd seen dreadnoughts before. He'd commanded fleets that could burn moons. But this ship was something older. Older than fear. Older than the wars that broke the galaxy. The Retribution's bridge was cathedral-like, high arches of dark alloy, light running through veins in the floor like molten circuits. Every station was manned not by crew, but by synthetic operators, pale figures of projected light, extensions of the ship's vast intelligence. Admiral Rhea Morgan stood at the command platform, hands clasped behind her back, her eyes on the tactical display. Erebus, scan the field. Confirmed. Coalition forces at 8% combat capability. Cruxer units, 42,000 biomechanical vessels. Tactical advantage, none. Rhea's lips curved faintly. Correction. Now, tactical advantage, human. At her gesture, the main view screen expanded, revealing the carnage below, rivers of plasma fire cutting across the sky, Cruxer ships tearing through the atmosphere like hornets. Erebus, prepare orbital strike sequence. Authorize full power to main lances. Authorization confirmed. Charging all spinal weapons. The ship's central spine began to glow, blue light spilling from hidden seams along its length. It was as though the void itself was being drawn inward, compressed into raw annihilation. Target? Erebus asked. Rhea's eyes fixed on the largest of the swarm vessels, a monstrous, hive-like structure half buried in the planet's upper clouds. That one. The heart. From the planet's surface, the soldiers of Delta Oris looked up through smoke-filled skies. They had been losing for days. And then the heavens turned white. The Retribution's main cannon fired. Not a beam, not plasma, but a folded horizon of energy, a spear of compressed light that screamed through the upper atmosphere and split the sky open. The Cruxer hive ship didn't explode. It ceased. Every molecule within its mass was unmade, its organic armor vaporizing in a silent bloom that stretched across the stratosphere. The shockwave followed a heartbeat later, a sunburst that sent ripples through the planet's magnetic field. Coalition comms went silent. Then, slowly, voices began to rise. They did it. By the stars. They did it. Back aboard the Retribution, Rhea's voice was calm. Confirmed target neutralization. Confirmed. One hive ship destroyed. Secondary swarms reorganizing. Incoming vectors, multiple. The screen filled with movement, the Cruxer swarm turning toward the Retribution, tens of thousands of them. Rhea watched them come. Let them. She turned to her AI. Deploy autonomous drones. Patterns Sigma 5. Keep them off the hull. Panels opened along the Retribution's flanks, releasing a glittering storm of drones, each the size of a fighter, sleek and wingless, moving like schools of fish through the void. The first wave of Cruxer slammed into the drone screen. They never reached the ship. The drones detonated in coordinated bursts, turning space into a ballet of annihilation. Thousands of the creatures vanished in seconds, light blooming like artificial dawn. The swarm didn't understand retreat.
But even it seemed to hesitate now.
In the Varuna's bridge, Admiral Kel Theron stared at the impossible. By the suns, he whispered. One ship did that. His calm officer looked back at him. Sir, they're hailing us. Kel's voice was dry. Put them through. The holographic screen shimmered, revealing Admiral Rhea Morgan, calm, composed, Terran uniform stark against the light of her bridge. Coalition Command. This is Admiral Morgan, Terran Defense Fleet. Kel swallowed. You answered. You called. For a long moment, there was only silence between them. The silence of history, of species that once stood together and fell apart. Admiral Morgan, Kel said, his voice breaking. Our worlds owe you. Don't, she interrupted gently. Save your thanks. You still have soldiers down there. We're not finished. You mean to fight the swarm alone?
No.
Rhea's tone hardened. We fight together. Humanity didn't come to save you, Admiral. We came to remind the galaxy what we are. The next assault came harder. The Cruxer adapted, their hulls reshaping mid-battle, absorbing energy fire, spitting out clouds of living minds. The Retribution responded with terrifying precision. Every shot it fired was calculated to the atom. Every move preempted the enemy's instincts. It wasn't a battle. It was a dissection. And yet, amidst the carnage, Rhea Morgan's eyes never softened. She had seen wars like this before. The same arrogance, the same hunger to consume. She whispered, almost to herself, You never learn. Erebus spoke again. Admiral. Enemy reinforcements inbound. Estimated arrival, 2 hours. Rhea turned. Then we'll need more firepower. Recommend activating secondary shipyards? Her gaze darkened. Not yet. But wake the fleet ghosts. All of them. Understood. Across Sol space, silent stations began to hum. Old war constructs buried for centuries. The Terran defense grid stirred, ancient cores flickering awake. For the first time in 1,000 years, humanity's war machine began to move. Back on the bridge of the Verna, Kel Theron watched the human ship carve through the swarm. He felt something he hadn't felt since he was young.
Hope.
And deep within him, a darker realization formed. The galaxy had spent centuries fearing humanity. They had been right to. The war front over Delta Oris was a storm of light. The TSS Retribution cut through the void like a blade dipped in lightning, but the Cruxer never stopped coming. They poured in from subspace tiers, living ships of chitin and plasma, more organism than machine, their bodies rippling with grotesque motion. Inside the Retribution, the bridge was calm. The only sound was the soft vibration of reactors deep below, like a giant heartbeat. Enemy reinforcements confirmed. The ship's AI, Erebus, reported. 60,000 additional swarm signatures detected. Estimated planetary saturation in 30 minutes. Admiral Rhea Morgan stood at the viewport, her reflection framed by the glow of a dying world. Her face was still, but her eyes, steel gray and tired, carried the weight of humanity's long exile. "The Coalition can't hold them," Erebus said quietly. "They were never meant to," Rhea replied. "We were." In the shadow of Earth's moon, ancient satellites woke. Once, they had been museums, silent monuments to wars humanity swore it would never fight again. But deep within them, code had slept. Code that listened for one voice. Fleet Command Authentication, Morgan Delta 7. One by one, the ghost fleets of Sol came alive. Thousands of Terran warships, forgotten relics of the human expansion era, powered up in synchronous sequence. Orbitals, carriers, stealth frigates, and dreadnoughts, all bound by quantum command links buried in Earth's crust. The void around Sol glowed faintly blue. Then, the transmission left Earth, a pulse that crossed light years in seconds. Fleet ghosts mobilize. Directive 04, Retribution Protocol. And across the stars, the sleeping fleets answered. Back at Delta Oris, Admiral Kel Theron stared at the tactical display. The Krexer were closing, an ocean of claws and teeth. His few remaining destroyers formed a desperate line in orbit, their shields flickering like candlelight in a storm. "Hold position,"
Kel shouted.
"Protect the Terran ship." But they didn't need to. The space behind the Retribution began to shimmer. At first, it looked like distortion, the afterburn of light. Then it grew. Dozens of colossal ships began to decloak, one after another, phasing in like ghosts from another era. The Terran Ghost Fleet had arrived. Each ship bore the scars of old wars. Blackened hulls. Names etched in forgotten tongues. Invictus. Ragnarok's hand. Aurora's wrath. Yet when they moved like one being, every gun, every drive, synchronized by the AI network that linked them across centuries. Kel Theron's jaw went slack. "By the suns, how many?" Erebus replied calmly, his voice transmitted across all channels. "Current deployment, 1,612 capital vessels. Total active firepower exceeds planetary scale metrics. Recommend maintaining safe distance." Kel whispered, "You call this a response?" Rhea's voice came over the open comms, quiet but unshakable. "You asked for anything. You're getting everything." The Krexer reacted instantly. Thousands of them turned, like a living hurricane, toward the new arrivals. Their overmind pulsed through the swarm, vast psychic energy boiling across subspace. "They fear us," Erebus noted. Rhea nodded slightly. "Then they're smarter than I thought." Her hand tightened on the armrest. "Signal all Terran units." "Signal active." "Initiate firing sequence, Heavenfall." The human fleet ignited the stars. Dozens of dreadnoughts fired at once, streams of plasma so bright they turned the darkness into daylight. Railguns accelerated tungsten rods to near-relativistic velocity, tearing through swarm lines like divine thunder. For a moment, there was no battle, just obliteration. Krexer vessels burst apart in liquid fire. Their psionic screams filled the comms spectrum like static. Whole formations disintegrated before they could even adjust course. Erebus reported without emotion. "Enemy losses, 47% in initial salvo. Continuing suppression." Rhea didn't respond. She was already watching the larger pattern. The way the overminds will push the survivors forward, forcing them into suicidal counterattacks. "It's learning," she said. "It's trying to adapt to human weapon patterns." Recommendation: stop fighting like humans. The Retribution's lights dimmed. From deep within the ship, something ancient began to stir, systems older than even Erebus's core. "Rhea," the AI said carefully, "you are authorizing Omega-tier systems. This action violates." "I know what it violates," she said coldly. "Do it." For the first time since its activation, Erebus hesitated. Then, confirmed. Omega-tier systems online. The hull of the Retribution began to shift, armor plates unfolding like wings, revealing a circular chamber beneath the ship's spine. Inside, an orb pulsed, a fragment of humanity's oldest forbidden weapon. The Dark Singularity Engine. Rhea whispered, "Open the gate." The battlefield changed. A black sphere expanded outward, space itself bending, dragging debris, ships, and starlight into its center. The Cruxer screamed, their organic ships twisting apart, shredded by gravity and light. The sphere pulsed once, then vanished. What remained was silence. Half the swarm was gone. The other half fled. No one had ever seen the Cruxer retreat. Not until now. On the Coalition flagship, Cal Theron slumped into his chair. "It's over," he whispered. "They're running." Rhea's face appeared once more on his display, calm, unreadable. "It's not over," she said. "They'll be back. They always come back." Then what happens next? Rhea looked out at the burning horizon of Delta Oris, her voice quiet but sharp as steel. "Next," she said, "humanity stops waiting for distress calls." Deep in Sol System, as the Ghost Fleet returned to formation, Earth's command network began to flicker with ancient transmissions, old orders, old memories, old wars waiting to wake. And somewhere in the cold dark between stars, the Cruxer Overmind whispered in fear, for the first time in its existence. "The humans are coming." Space was silent. Only the wreckage of the Cruxer swarms drifted across the stars, their twisted hulls glowing like dying embers. The TSS Retribution and her Ghost Fleet moved through the aftermath, cutting through debris fields like shadows through smoke. Admiral Rhea Morgan stood at the heart of her bridge, eyes locked on the tactical display. One red mark pulsed faintly amid the ruins, the signal of the Overmind itself. "Erebus," she said softly. "Trace that signature." Triangulating now. Origin, Cruxer Prime. Distance, 4.3 light-years. The holographic map expanded. A crimson system blinked into view. 3 suns, 5 shattered worlds, and a single living planet wrapped in bioorganic storms. Rhea exhaled slowly. "So that's where it hides. Recommend full fleet engagement?" Erebus asked. "No," Rhea replied. "Send word to the Coalition. Tell them to hold the lines. This strike is Terran." "Understood." Plotting jump vector. Within minutes, the Ghost Fleet aligned. Thousands of Terran warships formed a single arrowhead pattern, their drives burning with pale blue light. Rhea's voice echoed through every hull. "For centuries, we've been told to restrain ourselves, to forget the wars that forged us, to become civilized. Today, we remember what that means." The order fell like a hammer. Execute jump. Reality tore open. The Ghost Fleet vanished into the void. They emerged above Cruxer Prime. The world looked like a wound in space, its surface covered in living tissue, continents pulsing with organic motion, vast tendrils rising from the crust to feed on nearby moons. The entire planet breathed. "Planetary biomass at critical density," Erebus reported. "Surface structures resemble synaptic clusters. The entire world functions as one mind." Rhea's jaw tightened. "Then let's kill a god." The Cruxer reacted instantly. Millions of vessels poured from the planet's atmosphere, a tidal wave of wings, claws, and psychic fire. The void turned crimson as plasma storms erupted between the fleets. "Target their relay nodes," Rhea ordered. "Cut the Overmind's nerves." Terran dreadnoughts answered with railgun barrages. Each slug hit with the force of a small meteor, tearing through swarm formations and splattering organic hulls into vapor. But the swarm adapted fast. Their ships fused together mid-battle, forming monstrous biocolossi that dwarfed the Retribution itself. They opened their maws and released waves of energy that twisted metal like paper. For the first time, even Erebus hesitated. Shields failing on forward units. Losses rising. "Hold the line," Rhea snapped. "Redirect all auxiliary power to point defense. Fire pattern Omega-9." Thousands of Terran drones launched in response, swirling clouds of light weaving through the enemy's advance, exploding in precise, timed cascades. Each detonation carved holes in the biocolossi until they fell apart, burning in the vacuum. Still, the planet pulsed brighter. A psychic wave rippled through the void, shaking every human crew member to the core. Voices screamed in their heads, alien, ancient, furious. Your flesh. You will join. Rhea's eyes hardened. Not today. She keyed the command for the Retribution's main cannon. Charge the Singularity core. Erebus's tone dropped to a whisper. At this range, the gravitational fallout will. Do it. The ship trembled as energy built inside the core. The stars themselves seemed to dim. Power levels reaching critical, Erebus warned. Rhea stood firm. All ships, pull back to minimum safe distance. Retribution will deliver the final strike. Acknowledged, came the voices of 1,000 Terran captains. The Ghost Fleet fell away, engines burning hard. The Overmind sensed what was coming. From the planet's surface, vast tendrils of living matter lashed upward, wrapping around the Retribution's hull. Inside the bridge, metal groaned and sparks rained. Structural integrity down to 40%. Erebus shouted. Rhea gritted her teeth. Fire. The Retribution unleashed the Singularity Lance, a beam of compressed gravity and light that speared straight into the planet. For a moment, time itself seemed to shatter. Crexer Prime convulsed. Its crust split open, rivers of molten flesh and metal bursting outward. The psychic scream that followed tore through every channel, shaking ships, shattering glass, burning into minds. Then silence. The planet imploded. Where a world had been, only a swirling storm of dust and fading light remained. The Retribution floated in the debris field, hull blackened, engines dim. Fires burned along its spine, but the ship still lived. Overmind signal lost, Erebus said quietly. The hive is silent. Rhea sank into her chair, exhausted. Confirm casualties. Fleet losses, 12%. Civilian sectors unaffected. Mission success probability, 100%. She stared at the empty space where Crexer Prime had been. It's done. Correction, Erebus murmured. It has begun. Rhea looked up sharply. Multiple transmissions detected from neighboring systems. The AI continued. Every major power is calling. Some to thank you, others to beg for terms. Rhea gave a humorless smile. They'll all learn soon enough. She rose, straightened her uniform, and looked out at the ruins of the swarm. Transmit a message to the galaxy. Content. 3 words.
She paused.
Never again. Ever. Far beyond the wreckage, in the shadowed corridors of Coalition space, leaders watched the broadcast in silence. For the first time in recorded memory, the stars feared something other than the Crexer. They feared Earth. The stars were quiet again. For the first time in centuries, there was no screaming on the interstellar bands, no distress calls, no psychic static from the dying. Just the soft hum of radiation and the slow drift of wreckage. The TSS Retribution floated at the center of the void like a monument. Her hull was scorched, her banners torn, but she still lived. Every light that flickered across her surface was a heartbeat of human will that refused to die. On the bridge, Admiral Rhea Morgan stood alone. The crew moved softly behind her, speaking in hushed tones, afraid to break the silence that victory had left behind. Erebus, she said, her voice hoarse. Confirm Overmind elimination. Confirmed. Neural resonance across the swarm has ceased. The Crexer species is functionally extinct. She closed her eyes. And the Coalition? Broadcasts of surrender and gratitude continue. 43 systems have pledged allegiance to the Terran Defense Accord. Others remain silent. A faint, tired smile touched her lips. Of course they do. Gratitude has always been louder than guilt. Hours later, the Retribution descended toward the burned skies of Delta Oris. The surface, once crawling with biohorrors, now lay in quiet ruin. Forests smoldered, ocean steamed, and the horizon glowed faintly from the fire that had cleansed it. The surviving coalition soldiers gathered at the landing zone as the human vessel settled onto blackened rock. The air was thick with ash and awe. When Rhea stepped down the ramp, every non-human eye turned toward her. Scaled, furred, and feathered soldiers lowered their weapons and dropped to one knee. Even Admiral Keltherin, scarred and weary, bowed his head. "The galaxy owes humanity its existence," he said softly. "Without you, we would have fallen." Rhea regarded him with unreadable calm. "You didn't fall," she said. "You called for help." "That's different." Kel looked up, uncertain. "Then what do we owe you?" She considered the question for a long time. Around them, wind carried the scent of burnt soil and ozone. "Nothing," she said finally, "except the truth." "And what truth is that?" Rhea's gaze lifted to the stars. "That mercy doesn't mean weakness. It means remembering what strength is for." Days passed. The Ghost fleet lingered in orbit, silent and vigilant. Coalition engineers worked beside human drones to rebuild the orbital stations. Across the galaxy, comm channels buzzed with a single message: the humans are back. But in the great halls of power, the tone was not celebration, it was fear. On Vernax Prime, the Council of Worlds argued endlessly. They annihilated a species. They saved billions. They used a singularity weapon. They stopped the swarm. At the center of the chaos, one ambassador whispered the thought everyone else avoided. If this is how they help their allies, what happens when they decide someone is their enemy? The question spread like fire through the stars. On the Retribution, Rhea watched the political feed in silence. Public sentiment fluctuating, Erebus noted. Fear quotient rising. Humanity's reemergence is destabilizing existing power structures. Good, Rhea murmured. Stability is just another word for complacency. You anticipated this outcome. Of course. Every empire forgets until someone reminds them. And when they come for us? Rhea turned from the viewport, her expression calm. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Krexer did. Weeks later, a massive broadcast went out from Seoul. It wasn't polished or political. It was Rhea herself, live across every open channel, her voice cutting through static. To all sentient nations of the galaxy, she began. The Terran Defense Fleet will not occupy your worlds. We will not demand tribute or obedience. Humanity seeks no empire. She paused, letting silence fill the air. But understand this. No species enters human space uninvited again. No species hunts another while we stand watch. The age of conquest ends today. Her eyes hardened, and for a heartbeat her voice carried the weight of every soldier humanity had ever buried. You called us for help.
We came.
Next time, you won't need to. The feed cut. Across the galaxy, billions sat in silence. That night, Rhea stood in the observation dome above Earth. The planet shone below, blue and bright, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for a millennium. Erebus spoke quietly beside her. You have become what the galaxy feared most. Rhea smiled faintly. Then maybe fear will keep them honest. What will you do now? She looked toward the stars, where wreckage still glimmered like frozen embers. Rebuild.
Watch. Wait.
We've been gone long enough. And if someone challenges humanity again? Her answer was simple, almost gentle. Then we remind them what mercy costs. Far beyond the Terran borders, the void stirred. New empires would rise. Old ghosts would whisper. But in every council chamber and every war room, one phrase would be etched into memory. Do not test the humans. Because when they answered a plea for help, they didn't bring soldiers. They brought judgment.